Please welcome Dennis Snower, President of the Kiel Institute for the World Economy, and Dirk Messner, Director of the German Development Institute.
So, dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dirk Messner. A very warm welcome from my side. I'm very happy to see you all here, and I'm proud of what we has achieved during the last month. We met for the last time for our kick-off conference in December 2016, and during the last 4 or 5 months, a dozen working groups has been established and task forces on different issues of the G20 process. More than 55 policy briefs has been developed. They have been presented in many working groups of the G20. I think that we have been established a very important trajectory towards knowledge cooperation across the G20 countries and even beyond, because as you might know, we also established an Africa T20 standing group to include African partners in the debate about a global governance orientation which opts at implementing the 2030 agenda and the Paris Agreement. But even more important, I think, we have been establishing over the last years a knowledge-based network across the G20 countries, and knowledge-based networks are very important constellations in times in which some global leaders are creating their own facts, and some global leaders are creating their own realities. And therefore, science-based and knowledge-based networks are very crucial to push forward global governance processes which are based on facts and evidence. And beyond that, we all see that intergovernmental multilateralism is in a very difficult situation. My colleague already spoke about Italy last weekend, the G7 summit, very difficult negotiations. And in situations in which intergovernmental multilateralism is in trouble, transnational networks and knowledge-based networks are even more important. So I think that T20 can make a difference, and we have been doing quite a good deal of work during the last month, and we do have a bright future in this scenario in which knowledge-based evidence should be a precondition and a driver of collective action at global scales. In my pre-remarks, I would like to emphasize and move rapidly into the time dimension of processes towards a global, sustainable and inclusive economy and society, the time dimension. First, I would like to look back. I would like to look back because I think that we are in times which are comparable to times in the past which we should consider. We are at a crossroads currently. It's about globalization at stake. It is about digitalization and rapid and accelerating technological change. It is about inequalities and how to manage those. My analogy looking back to the past is 1890 to 1910. If you look into this period and zoom into this period, you can observe something very similar. Acceleration during these times of international trade, the first wave of internationalization of trade. New infrastructures emerging, electrification in these days. Mobility infrastructures from horses to cars. Urban shifts, science and modernization shifts in science. Niels Bohr and Max Planck inventing modern physics in these times. Pasteur and Koch inventing microbiology and revolutionizing healthcare and the medical sector. In Vienna, brain research, cognitive research, psychology emerged. So it was a time of change, of modernization, of internationalization, and therefore also of structural change, deep structural change. And this translated, as we all know, into overburdened societies. It translated into stress on societies. And it translated at the end of the day towards 1914 and then towards 1939. So overburdened and stressed societies in processes of acceleration of modernization and internationalization. I recommend you to read a wonderful book written by Philip Blohm, a German historian who is teaching history in Oxford. The vertigo moment, the vertigo moment. And I think that the constellations nowadays are similar. And this time, we need to do better, of course. In contrast to 1918 to 1910, we could argue that now we do have a multilateral system. In those days, we did not have a multilateral system. Now we have one. But we also know it is under huge stress. So there is no automatism towards a peaceful transformation, towards an inclusive, fairness-based global governance system. We need to work very hard for that. And the work of T20 is exactly positioned in this situation, in this context. We need strong knowledge-based networks, as I already said. We need strong multilateralism first oriented visions towards the future. The 2030 agenda is therefore important for us. We had task forces around this agenda. The Paris Agreement is therefore very important. We had task forces around this agenda. How to manage inequalities, societies under stress, is very important. Mr. Appel will talk about this issue and what the business sector can deliver here. So in times of uncertainties, in times of vertigo moments, we need to put at the center fighting social centrifugal forces, fighting inequalities, and we need to empower people to take part, to be able to take part of inclusive development pathways. If we don't get these axes right, we are in a situation which is troublesome, and therefore we need to learn from the past. So my second time axis is towards the future now. If we compare the situation in 1890 to 1910 with the current situation, there is, of course, one very important difference. Now we talk about the Anthropocene, humans moving the planet, global society able to change the basic dynamics of the Earth system, global warming, shrinking biodiversity, Earth system change and tipping points in the Earth system are possible in the 21st century. This is new. And what is needed is the following, very simple actually. First, to stay below 2 degrees global warming, we need to decarbonize the global economy by 2050. To stabilize resources in the ecosystems, natural scientists are demonstrating that, again, we need a circular economy towards 2050. And to make this possible, the period from now to 2030 is very important. We need to get the decisions right in the global economy when it comes to the global infrastructures, mobility, energy, urbanization, to really move into this sustainable orientation, this sustainability-oriented global economy. If we miss this time window, we run into difficult situations and we will run into lock-ins, which then are will be very difficult to correct in the following decades to come. So the period from now to 2030 is absolutely critical. From a humanities perspective, from an Earth system perspective, we need rapid and accelerated action, and we are under time pressure. And we have to understand that the decisions during the next decade or decade and a half will be decisive for the 21st century as a whole. And even more so, if you would move based on lock-ins in a high carbon pathway, for example, into a 4 degrees warmer world, the decisions of the next 2 decades would have impacts for many generations to come. For all generations to come, actually, because we would change the basic structures of the Earth system. Therefore, we are living in very important times, and the good news is, and this is what our policy briefs and our task forces has been working on and focusing on, the good news is that we do have actually the solutions to move into the right directions. Inclusive development, sustainable development, decarbonization, circular economy, food security. We do have solutions for that, and we are demonstrating that based on our science. And we built during the last months interesting coalitions. For example, we sent a letter to the G20 building an alliance of T20, B20, C20 and others to demonstrate that we together are in favor of implementing rapidly the Paris Agreement. In these days, as you know, such a signal is very important and very helpful. And the last point here is that we also wrote a letter, B20, T20, C20, Women 20, where we argued that there are many differences regarding perspectives and preferences and interests, but we all agree on Paris, the 2030 agenda, open societies, and a culture of global cooperation. And I think this is what we need to work for, and I'm sure that T20 can deliver here, and I'm looking forward to vibrant discussions because we have very, very interesting solutions on the table, bright people in the room. So let's celebrate the knowledge-based process of T20. Thank you very much for listening.